This is a sequence of 10 somatic movements to both loosen and strengthen the hips and surrounding muscles. Let's begin by sitting. You can either kneel as I'm doing, or you can sit cross-legged, or you can be on a bolster or on a block or a cushion. Just to take a few moments to connect to yourself, to your body, to your somatic experience right now. So sensing and feeling into your inner environment. Paying particular attention to your hips. See how your hips feel. See how your low back is. And then let's come to all fours. So knees hip width apart, hands slightly forward of the shoulders. And come back into child's pose 3 times. So you might take a deep breath in, then you exhale, buttocks to the heels. It's noticing the hinge of your hip joints. And you inhale, you come back up again. And exhale, you return to child's pose, just whatever's comfortable, not forcing anything. And then let's come back up again. And once more, coming into your child. And then come up to all fours. Lift your right foot a little from the floor, so your right kneecap is lightly touching. In fact, you might just lift and lower the kneecap from the floor slightly, just to make sure you've got a very light touch of your knee to the floor. And then start to trace a figure 8 on the floor with your kneecap. So you have to get the amount of pressure right so that you don't get snagged up in the mat and that the movement of the muscle isn't too jerky. You might notice that there are sticking points, let's go in the opposite direction, where your muscles perhaps aren't used to working like this, or they're not able to function optimally for whatever reason, or because they're feeling a little weak. So you might notice that there are places that are skipping over. Okay, be still. So just rest that right foot down on the floor and change sides. So you lift your left foot up, so the left kneecap is on the floor, and you just lift your left kneecap once or twice, just to make sure you've got that very light touch of the kneecap to the floor, and then start to trace your figure 8. And so you're letting the foot kind of twist around a little bit, letting the side body join in. You might notice it's really quite different experience, one side of the body to the other. So I'm skipping over a lot more places on my left side. It's a particularly big one than I do on my right. So let's go on the opposite trajectory now with that figure 8. So you're going in reverse around your figure 8. And if you are finding sticky places, then go a little slower. Let's see if that's helpful. Okay. And then be still, so you lower your left foot back down. And then look past the front of your mat. You're not going to hang your head down. Keep your right knee, the top of the right foot on the floor, and just slide the right knee forward so that the right foot can just move over to the left side, so past the front of your left knee. You cross your legs and you gently draw back towards a child's pose with legs crossed. And then you bring yourself back up, slide right knee, right foot forward and back across to right side, and then you change sides. So you're keeping the knee, the shin, the foot on the floor, left knee comes towards the hands, foot goes over towards the right side. So you're aware of the sensory feedback from foot to floor, shin to floor as you move. And you take the buttocks back towards the heels into that cross-legged child's pose, and then you slowly return to neutral. So go from side to side a couple more times with it. You can experiment with speed, and you can Experiment with the angle of the foot. So foot might go into a different position each time. So check that you're breathing easily and comfortably. There's no strain in your neck and in your upper body. And then next time you have your left knee crossing over your right knee, so you want your thighs to touch as best as possible. We'll come back to all fours and be still. Taking a moment to sense and feel into the whole body, particularly into the hips. And then let's lift the right knee out to the side. So right knee and foot lifting out to the side. And draw the knee towards the shoulder. So you're squeezing through the side body. And then take the knee back in line with the hip. And again, squeeze the knee towards the shoulder. And back in line with the hip. Once more, squeeze the knee towards the shoulder. And back. And then let's lower down. And change sides. So you're taking your left knee and foot out to the side. So the knees kind of level with the hip. And then you squeeze the knee towards the shoulder. You keep it up high so you feel contraction through the left side waist. And then you bring the knee in line with the hip again. And you squeeze towards the shoulder. And release. And take it once more. Squeeze towards the shoulder. And release. And lower back down to all fours. Let's travel back into child's pose again. So buttocks to the heels. So you might already be noticing some different experience in your child's pose now from when you began. And let's come back up and again, let's exhale, come into child's pose. And come back up. And into child's pose. And from child's pose, walk the hands in towards the knees. So you're sitting upright on your heels to transition to sitting. So you might just drop your hips down to the floor on one side and swing your legs around in front of you. And just take a moment to sit and to see how it is. So you might be noticing what's going on here around your hip joints and into your groin and up into your side waist and into your back. So noticing the somatic sensory experience. And then let's come into tailor's pose. So you bring the soles of the feet together and have the knees out to the side. And rest your elbows to the inside of your knees. Maybe you can also rest your hands on your ankles, but the main thing is to have the elbows to the knees. And we'll arc and curl the spine, as well as lifting and lowering the knees. And we're going to self-pandiculate, which means that we will manually control with pressure from the elbows into the knees, the release and the activity of the hip muscles. So we have the elbows to the inside of the knees, and we're going to lift the knees up, resisting a little with the elbows. So you don't need to really fight against yourself, but you want to feel that the muscles are working, there's some resistance, and you round your spine. So let your shoulders curl, let your chin drop, let your back body broaden out. And then press the elbows down into the knees, but the knees resist the elbows a little to return to your butterfly pose, but with an arched spine now. So you squeeze your shoulder blades in, you lift your breastbone up, you let your head float upwards. So let's take this a few more times. So go really slowly. So slowness is key if we want the mind and the muscle to really connect up, if we don't want to be on autopilot. So there's a little bit of resistance from the arms into the legs so that you really notice what's happening around your groin, what's happening around your hips. Let's do one more. And you might also notice some shuddering of the muscles again in those places that don't feel they can function optimally. So that shuddering is named sensory motor amnesia in somatics. So muscles forgetting how to work to their best. Okay, and then just let it go, let it all go for a moment and completely relax. Release all muscular effort. And then just tuck your right foot a little closer towards you and your left foot a little further away from you. You've got your right hand on your right ankle and your left hand to the floor behind you. And just let the left hand slide away a little bit, roll back. You might come down onto your elbow and straighten your leg out and then come back up. So the intention is not to just have a poker straight leg, you know, you're not worrying about hamstrings and so on. You're just enjoying the flow of movement through you. You might notice that the spine arcs and curls. You don't have to have a tight grip on the leg, just use the hand to go in the right direction. And then let's take a pause and rotate the hip round so you're pointing the toes to the wall behind you there. Keep your hand on the ankle though, so that you can really contract and then lengthen through the side of the body. So let's take that one a few times. Again, go a little slower through the places that you tend to power through, because those are likely to be places of weakness or vulnerability. And also go more slowly through the places that are stuttering. Okay, so next time the foot is in front, let's gently change things up. So you've got left foot in front and you're catching hold of the ankle with left hand, right hand's on the floor behind you. You just let the hand slide away. It might not go too far behind you, or you might come down onto the elbow and you just roll back and you lengthen the leg up. So you're not trying to stretch your leg, you're not trying to work anything, you're just simply going with the dynamic of the movement through your body, with an awareness of what's happening through your hip and an awareness of how your pelvis connects to your spine. So let it be really easy and free. And then next time you're up, we're rotating the hip to point the toes to the wall behind. Just keep a very light touch of the hand to the ankles. You don't need to grip, but just a light touch of hand to ankle, because you'll notice that that activates your side body and your shoulder, as well as your hip. So feeling that the body is fluid, which it is. So body made up of at least 70–80% water. So going with that fluid element as you move. So even with the heaviness of your bones, just let them flow. Okay, so let's return back to a tailor's pose and sit for a moment. And you might notice that your expression of tailor's pose is a little easier because we've released tension from the back, from the hips and the groin. And it could be that you're just sitting with more lightness than before. And then let's straighten the legs out in front and flex the feet. So you've got your toes pointing up towards the ceiling. Notice how it is to be here. So not always a comfortable place to sit. And then let's bend the right knee, flex the foot, catch hold the knee with the hands. You can lift the foot a little from the floor. And let's tense the leg. So just the right leg tensing. And then slowly release that tension, extend the leg out in front of you and lift it an inch or so away from the floor without leaning back, without lifting from your shoulders. And then lower the leg down. And again, let's lift. So if you extend the right leg a little past the left leg, that's helpful. And then lower, that'll stop you kind of leaning backwards. And then let's lift again. And lower. And then bring the left knee in towards the chest, catch hold, flex the foot, lift the heel a little from the floor and tense the leg. So hugging muscle to bone. And then extend the leg out. Again, slightly past your right leg, and you lift the leg up just an inch or so from the floor and you lower down. And then again, you lift and then you lower and then you lift. And so here you're feeling a stuttering probably of your muscles, which are learning to strengthen. And then you lower. Draw the right knee in again, flex the foot, tense the leg. Just bring your hand onto your hip area here, and feel the hip muscles. So actively do this, you're kind of contracting your hip, feel it move away from your palm somehow, so that you're really tuning into the muscles around the hip. So a lot of us have lost contact with this muscle because we do so much sitting. So all the muscles around here that support you, just feel them contracting, then relax them. So extend the leg out, lift it up, keep it lifted, take it out to the side about 45 degrees, and then bring it back to center, keeping it lifted. So if the leg's really shaking, maybe you can press your hand into your hip, or maybe you give yourself a little light support. But hopefully you're feeling the target strengthening area here in the hip, and then you lower the leg down and change sides. So draw the left knee in, flex the foot, tense the muscles. You can bring the left hand onto the left hip and feel the muscles draw away from the palm because you're consciously contracting them. And just notice if these muscles aren't switching on as easily as you want, which other muscles you're switching on instead. So notice if you're hefting your shoulders up or clenching your jaw or doing something with your knee, or because your hip muscles don't work. So just tuning into that. So let's extend the leg out, and then we're lifting and taking the leg out to the side, keeping it lifted, so about 45 degrees, and then back to center, keeping it lifted. So you might do this with the hand on the hip, and back to center, or perhaps giving light support underneath the leg, out to the side, and back to center. Good, so let's lower the leg down. Give the legs a shake out, so we'll just internally and externally rotate them so that you can feel it up in your hip joint there. And then if you're fairly good and strong in your core and in your low back, we can perhaps try lifting both legs together, but only do that if it feels safe. So let's bring both knees in towards the chest. You can catch hold the knees with the hands. Just perhaps lift the feet a fraction from the floor, and you're tensing both legs. So if you squeeze the insides of the legs together, you'll feel these hip muscles engaging. And then extend the legs out. Put your palms down and onto the floor, about level with your knees. So depending on your body shape, you might need to have the hands in different position, but about level with your knees. And you're going to draw your belly in round your spine and lift both legs up. So squeeze the insides of the legs together, push out through your heels, push down into your palms, and lift. And then lower, and you might even just do a little lift of your breastbone there, so you're arcing and curling your spine through this. We'll do it twice more. So you curl, you round your spine, you round your shoulders, you squeeze the insides of the legs together, and then you lower the legs down and you lift your breastbone, draw your shoulders down, you arc. And once again. Okay, let it all go. Just take your feet a little bit further apart, sit for a moment, releasing all muscular effort. So these moments of release, these moments of rest, are the time when the muscles repattern and come back to neutral functioning, a resting state. And then let's just take one more of these. So perhaps you want to scooch over to the edge of your mat. So let's have right leg in line with the outer edge of the mat, because it's easier to have your foot on the carpet, and it's also easier to wear socks for this one. So you're going to bend your left knee and cross the legs so that your left foot comes over onto the floor on the right side, so on the carpet if you can manage that. And maybe hands are just down beside you as light support. And you're going to rub a little circle on the floor with the sole of your foot. So probably just the ball of your foot, but it might be that you can get the heel down onto the floor as well. So circling round, rubbing, noticing what's going on in the hip, obviously, but also noticing the sensory information that's coming in through the foot and into the leg and how that's informing the leg. It's going the opposite direction. So you might try one or two smaller circles, you might try one or two bigger circles, maybe just slide away and come back in, so you don't have to be doing the same thing all the time. Really feeling into those hip muscles and noticing how this is both releasing and strengthening at the same time. So it's releasing in that there's a lengthening of the muscles and a squeeze release and a contract, and it's strengthening obviously because we're using muscles in ways that we don't normally. Okay, so just let that go for a moment. You might want to just push the foot down into the floor, and then you can release that. Uncross your legs, just relax both legs for a moment. So be with the sensation. So you might notice that the left side of your body feels quite different to the right side at the moment. And then perhaps you scooch over to the other side. So the left leg is in line with the outer edge of the mat and you're flexing your foot. And you bend your right knee and place the sole of the foot flat to the floor. Arms are down beside you, just as light support. So you're sitting up tall, you're relaxed in your shoulders. And then let's start that rubbing of the foot to the floor. And you're playing around. So maybe you do one or two where it's just perhaps the pads of the toes on the floor. One or two where it's the ball of the foot. And one or two where it's the heel as well. See how each one changes the experience in the hip area, in the side body, in the low back. Let's go in the opposite direction. You might also be experimenting with size of circle, with shape of circle. You just want to kind of slide the foot away and come back in and just see what's happening here through right side. So the brain likes movement to be new in order to stay in connection with it. It likes learning things that are new. If it's coming across something very familiar, it just switches off and goes to do something else because it knows what's required. And then be still. Cross your legs. Turn yourself to the center of your mat and just notice what's going on. So it's generating a lot of heat and energy in me. Just doing that. So you can tune in. And then let's finish with a thigh stretch. So bend your right knee and draw your heel in by your right hip. And then aim to sit with both sit bones comfortably to the floor. So this knee needs to be completely comfortable. Might be that you angle it a little further out to the side or maybe completely out to the side. But for slightly stronger experience through the front of the thigh, the knees could be closer together. And maybe you just sit with the hands in the lap. Maybe you support with the hands behind. If you're fairly flexible, maybe you come down onto your elbows, only if that feels comfortable and sustainable. And you just tuck your tailbone a little bit, so draw your tail a little towards the end of your mat. Just focus on your breath. So your straight leg is active, the toes are pointing to the ceiling. And although you're relaxed in your upper body, you're not collapsed. So you're kind of sinking right down. So let's have a little bit of buoyancy and support. Soften your neck, soften your face. Just tracking the breath here. And then bring yourself up if you've come into the reclining version. And just very gently swing that right leg round. Perhaps massage the knee. Or massage the hip or the low back. And let's take it on the other side. So you're going to bend your left knee, bring the heel in by the hip. Choose the angle of the thigh. You could be right at 90 degrees. Or you could be at 45 degrees. Or you could have the knees fairly close together, so knees would be about hip width apart. Left knee needs to be absolutely comfortable, no forcing or straining in the knee. And then you either just simply sit, a few moments to sit, so you want the weight even through sit bones, or perhaps you rest the hands behind you. So not quite so challenging as sitting up if you've got the hands behind you. Or perhaps you come down onto elbows. Only if that feels really safe and sustainable. So if you're holding your breath, or if you're grimacing, or if you're coming down gracelessly, you know, you sort of lurch onto one side and then the other, then you probably shouldn't be here. So just stay in one of the previous ones. Just settle into your breath, the rhythm of your breath, and into the notion of continually releasing unnecessary effort. So for most of us, the front of the thigh is tight, and so it's probably quite uncomfortable in a, muscle releasing kind of way to be in this position. Joint needs to be completely comfortable, but there can be a pull in the muscle, that's okay. Yeah, so when we're faced with that kind of experience in the body, we tend to brace a bit. So you don't want to brace, you want to yield, you want to soften, you want to relax. And if you can't do that, then you're too far into the pose. And you need to be able to relax and release. Slowly bring yourself up. So if you're quite reclined, draw the belly in, so you give your back some support to push yourself up. And then you very gently unfold the leg. Do it slowly, carefully, mindfully. And then you massage around the knee or around the hip, or actually into the thigh, just wherever your body feels like it might need a bit of extra support. And then just take a moment to sit like we did at the beginning of this particular part of the sequence. And see how it is to sit. So it might be, things are a little more comfortable now. I'm going to come back up to all fours, and we'll do that by drawing the heels into the hips and come through kneeling. So notice which side you're drawn to go to, and then go to the opposite side. So you're going to draw your heels into your hips, you can push yourself through kneeling up to all fours. So we're back where we began. And let's return into our child's pose. This was our first movement. And just see how your child's pose feels. It might be different, hopefully. Your hips feel warmer, looser, stronger, more awake. So come back up to all fours and then gently travel back again. And come up. And once again, traveling back. And it might be that if you're comfortable here, that you could end the sequence here. You just rest in child's pose now for a minute or two, and then you'd come up and gently shake the legs out and so on. If it's not so comfortable to be in child, then perhaps you want to finish the sequence sitting in the same position that we began in. So you could spend a moment or two here, and in the closing moments of quiet, you're checking in and you're scanning your body and you're noticing how the movements have affected you. Or of course you can come and lie on your back, whatever feels best for you. But do give yourself a moment or two to rest, to integrate, to pay attention to what's happened, particularly around your pelvis.